introduce our next speaker, Dr. Lodovica Gullino at the University of Torino, Italy. It's hard to begin to summarize her contributions to the field of plant pathology in Europe, in the US, and really around the world. Her research on disease management, biological control, integrated pest management is international, as well as its impact. And rightly so, she has received numerous awards, national and international awards for her work. Her research group in Torino is hugely productive with a diversity of studies on Fusarium Wilt of lettuce. And as you can see, she has 2 places in our lineup of speakers today. And as such, a conference on Fusarium Wilt of lettuce would be incomplete without her contributions. Dr. Gullino.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Yuma is quite far away from Italy, but it's a real pleasure to be here with you. I will bring you the experience, the Italian experience, and a little bit also of the European experience, talking about lettuce and chicory grown in Italy, especially in Europe, especially with our experience in ready-to-eat salads, the type of lettuce that we are growing, the geographical distribution, symptoms and hosts for Fusarium wilt, the factors that affect disease, and I will mostly focus on the research done by our group in Torino. First of all, the 2 crops, lettuce and chicory, which are considered together by FAO data in Europe. As you can see, Italy is second to Spain in the production of lettuce and chicory, and in terms of production area hectares, and also in terms of tons produced. After Italy, there is France, Germany, UK. And if we are looking at the import and export of lettuce, you see that Spain is the major exporting country, followed by Italy. And if we are looking at the import of lettuce, Germany is the first country importing lettuce, followed by UK and other countries coming down. We are mostly focusing on ready-to-eat salads because Italy is the second consumer and is also the second producer of ready-to-eat processed salads in Europe. In this case, we are after UK, and you can also see that if we are looking at ready-to-eat produce, considering together fruit and vegetables, in Italy when we buy processed vegetables, we mostly buy salads more than fruit, while for instance in UK they buy both salads and ready-to-eat processed fruit. And here is the production of processed salad in Italy. There are farms very much specialized in this production. We have 700 farms, 120 companies dealing with 1,500 workers. And in the case of processed salads, they are composed with lettuce, rocket, both wild rocket and cultivated rocket, so it means Diplotaxis and Deruca sativa, lamb's lettuce, some spinach, chicory, and leafy beet. This production is extremely important because it's a cash production, is very good for growers in our country. It started in northern Italy, in Lombardy, and is extended in central and also northern Italy, Veneto, Tuscany in central Italy, and in southern Italy. The total area is 6,500 hectares, 70% under greenhouse or tunnels, and 30% are open fields. Which are the varieties that we are growing for the processed market? From Lactuca sativa, we have Butterhead, Iceberg, Romaine, Loose Leaf, and Latin Batavia. The most grown are in France are Batavia and Oak Leaf. In Spain, they prefer Crispade, and in Italy, Butterhead and Cos and Loose Leaf type. And then, as I told you already, we are also growing Rocket, Chicory, and Leaf as other salads and greens. If we just look at the number of new varieties that are registered in Europe, you see the increase in number if we start in 152 to 2010 from 125 and 1,753. This means how dynamic is the market. And we see that Netherlands is the country where they produce and register more new varieties than France, Italy, Spain, and then the other European countries. The cropping systems under greenhouse or plastic houses, and in this case, especially for the ready-to-eat market for the processed salad, we have several cycles. We do, like Dr. Koike said, we are rotating lettuce with lettuce with lettuce, sometimes lettuce with rocket, but the cycles are very many. The crop has very high density. We have field, 30% field grown, open field, and also soil-less cultivation with flooding. And we found in 2002 Fusarium Wilt of lettuce in Lombardy, in a farm growing salads for processing. Here we have the presence in Europe. We have Fusarium Wilt in Italy, starting in 2002. Then in 2005 it was found in Portugal. And it's very, very recently in the Netherlands, 2015, we are working together with the Dutch colleagues in order to identify the race present in the Netherlands at the moment. We saw already the symptoms, which are very clear, and also in our case, of course, we don't have the temperature and the climate of Yuma and of Arizona, but we can start seeing the symptoms at the late spring in summer. We know that the number of crops which are non-host, and we know that from data from our colleague that roots of broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, and the resistant cultivars can be colonized by Fusarium Wilt. We're working also with other salad crops, and I must tell you that, as with many other Fusarium Wilt, starting from basil but on other crops, Fusarium Wilt was observed also on wild and cultivated rocket. In this case, the causal agents are Fusarium oxysporum, Forma specialis raffani, and conglutinans. Then on lamb's lettuce, Valerianella auditoria, Fusarium oxysporum again, raffani, and conglutinans. On endive, Fusarium oxysporum, and also on cicoria, and Forma specialis of Fusarium Wilt, Fusarium Forma specialis cicori. So we have several Fusarium wilts on salad crops caused by different Forma specialis of Fusarium. And what is very interesting as a researcher, of course, not so easy for growers and for breeders, is that most, if not all, of these Fusarium wilt are seed-borne. We heard already about the effect of the temperature. With higher temperature, the Fusarium Wilt of lettuce is going much faster. And here we have some example of the effect of temperature on Fusarium Wilt on different cultivars with different susceptibility. And of course, if the cultivar are very susceptible to Fusarium Wilt at high temperature, the disease goes very, very fast. Here we have some practical example. With the Batavia, highly susceptible, Romana velvet susceptible, Batavia partially resistant, and Olorosa which is resistant. You see that high temperature, in a very few days we reach 90 of disease index, so this means almost all plants are dead, while it takes longer with partially resistant varieties. In some cases, with the resistant varieties or at lower temperatures, it takes over 100 days to get this level of symptoms. So this means that the high temperature, and when you can play on planting date, it is very important to reduce the damage by Fusarium Wilt. In just a few seconds to tell you that we are using also as a model lettuce and Fusarium lactuce to work under phytotron to study the effect of climate change on certain pathosystem, and again also by working in this future scenario, we can see that more than CO2 is the temperature affecting the level of disease of Fusarium wilt. One important aspect for the spread of the disease is the fact that we can find, although at very low level, Fusarium lactuce on seeds. And as you know, from a theoretical point of view, if we are talking about theory, there is a difference for pathogen being inside or outside the seed. But from a practical point of view, also just staying outside of the seed, it is important and dangerous for the spread of the pathogen. When we were looking some years ago at the presence of Fusarium lactuce on seeds, we did find, you see, not such a high number of infected seeds, 2 out of 1,500, 1 out of 500, 1 out of 500, 1 out of 1,500. But although this number looks very low, if you imagine, if you know very well how many seeds are used for sowing in a field, it is enough to have a very low number of infected seeds to get a high amount of disease in practical conditions. And in all cases, only in 1 out of several isolations was not a pathogenic Fusarium. All of these cases were checked, and it was Fusarium oxysperm forma speciale lactuce. Another important aspect is which kind of race do you have in your field, in your country. We have an intensive collaboration with Japan, with United States, with colleagues working on Fusarium wilt. And in our case, in Italy, we have only at the moment race 1 of Fusarium lactuce. Of course, we are also working with race 2 and 3 that were provided by our colleague in Japan. But in the practice, we have only race 1. And our race 1 is, here we have the differential varieties, cultivars, like they were already described by our colleague. And our race 1 is, I would say, similar, equal to the race 1, the American race 1. Is, you see, when we did compare the reaction of different varieties provided by different seed company to the Italian race and the American race, the response has always been equal. I don't think I have time to tell you about the whole story about the vegetative compatibility studies. In our study, our isolates, the race 1 was assigned to YCEDA 300, and the Taiwanese isolate type 1 were assigned 301. And also we had in the past work done on identification and diagnosis of through molecular tools of Fusarium lactuce in order to be able to detect it also at low levels on seeds, particularly on seeds. We know very well that with such a low rate of seed infection, it is very difficult and also risky to be able to use these tools for identification and for checking samples, but it could be one more tool available for growers and organ growers for seed companies. And here we have the tools that we develop, IRAP profile and the SCAR technique for use on plant and the seed. So, which are the critical aspects for disease management in Italy and in Europe? First of all, the fact that we are working under very much intensive cultivation systems with a high number, 5 to 7 cycles of crop on the same soil. We have very few chemicals available, and as you know, all of us, we have less and less fumigants available. Moreover, most of the crop grown for processed salads are adopting, if not the rules of organic farming, very strict rules that don't permit to fumigate the soil. So this means that we have to find other control measures, avoiding the use of chemicals. The pathogen is spread by infected seeds, and we have a very high crop density, and this is of course favoring the spread of the disease, the intensity, the severity of the disease. What it is interesting, and we were discussing this yesterday with the Japanese colleague, is why in Europe we have Fusarium Wilt only in Italy, in Portugal, and now also in the Netherlands, not for instance in France. By considering the disease seed transmitted, that's is a little bit weird, at least in southern France. Probably they didn't look after it. We will work with some French colleagues on this because it's something interesting. Thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions for Dr. Gullino.
Yeah, I didn't catch the slide in time to interpret the data. What effect did the concentration of CO2 and temperature have on the growth of the Fusarium?
When we are working under phytotron, we test average present temperature and much higher temperature in the future, and we double the CO2 level from 450 to 800. So the increase of CO2 apparently doesn't affect the severity of Fusarium wilt. What is affecting is the increase of temperature.
You know, have they ever done any kind of research, as far as the soil is concerned, the amount of microbial activity, to find out, for example, the soils that are getting the disease, and for example in France, that they don't have it, what is the microbial activity in the soil? Because, I think that's one thing that we're not looking at, what do we have in the soil?
You're right. We will talk about a little bit more about these aspects of adding microorganisms, not in the second talk anyway, but you're right. There is a possibility.
Right, we'll talk more about that this afternoon. Well, let's thank Dr. Gullino once more. Thank you.